My sister forced me to be her children's learning example of a failed life, making me tell them why not to be like me every Sunday. When she lost custody, I adopted her kids and made her watch through the window as they called me mom. It started with a text from my sister Caroline. Sunday dinner, 5 p.m. Don't be late. No, please. No, would you like to come? Just a command as usual. I should have known something was off right then. Caroline never invited me over unless she needed something. For context, Caroline is your classic perfect eldest daughter. She married Matthew right after college, had 2 kids, Sophie and Luke, and lived in a house that looked like it was staged for a magazine photo shoot. Meanwhile, I was the family disappointment who chose my own path instead of following the life script she and our parents had planned out. That first Sunday, I showed up with a bottle of wine and some cookies I'd baked for the kids. Caroline took one look at my homemade treats and tossed them straight in the trash. "We don't eat processed sugar here," she said, even though I'd used organic honey as a sweetener. Whatever. Then came the real reason for the invitation. Caroline gathered everyone in the living room, sat the kids down on their pristine white couch, who has white furniture with young kids, and said something I'll never forget. "Children, Aunt Eva is going to tell you about her life choices and why they're wrong. Pay attention. This is what happens when you don't listen to mommy and daddy." I just stood there, mouth hanging open. Was she serious? But before I could say anything, she pulled me aside and whispered, "You owe me for helping you during your rough patch. Unless you want mom and dad to hear about how you never paid me back that money." She was referring to the $2,000 she'd lent me 5 years ago, which I'd actually repaid with interest. But she'd lost the documentation, and my parents would believe her over me. They always did. So began the Sunday lessons. Week after week, I had to sit there and explain why my life choices were wrong, why being unmarried at 34 was sad, why following my dreams instead of the family-approved path made me a cautionary tale. But here's where it gets interesting. Sophie and Luke, they didn't buy it. When Caroline wasn't looking, they'd ask me questions about my life, genuinely curious and excited. I caught them drawing pictures of things I'd told them about. Luke once whispered, "I wish I could be brave like you, Aunt Eva." Then things started unraveling at Caroline's perfect home. Matthew began drinking heavily. The facade cracked. Caroline's perfect control started slipping, and she got meaner. The lessons became more brutal. She'd nitpick everything about me, my clothes, my hair, my life choices. The kids started looking more anxious, more withdrawn. One night, my phone rang at 2 a.m. Sophie was crying, using an old phone they'd hidden in their toy chest. "Aunt Eva, Daddy's throwing things again. Mommy says it's because we're not good enough, like you." I called CPS and the police immediately. The investigation revealed years of emotional abuse. Caroline had been using me as a scapegoat while terrorizing her own children with impossible standards. Matthew's alcoholism had turned violent. Both kids were diagnosed with severe anxiety. When they needed emergency placement, I stepped up. I had a spare room and stability. Ironically, my wrong life choices had led to financial independence. The judge granted me temporary custody, which became permanent when both Caroline and Matthew refused counseling. Now for the part that some might call revenge, but I consider justice. The day the adoption was finalized, I got a text from Sophie saying Caroline was outside. I looked out my window, and there she was, standing on the sidewalk, watching. I gathered Sophie and Luke, who'd been asking to call me Mom for weeks, their choice, not mine, and hugged them right in front of the big living room window. They both squealed, "Mom!" loud enough to be heard outside. Luke even pressed his hand against the glass, showing off his first bad grade, a B- he'd gotten in math, which I'd celebrated because he'd tried his best. Caroline stood there for an hour, watching her failed sister succeed where she couldn't, watching her children thrive without her perfect standards and rigid rules.